Well, thanks for coming this evening. As I was saying to Roland earlier, it's a really beautiful evening out, and you probably all would rather be sitting out enjoying a beer, a cup of coffee, or something at one of the cafes a block away from us here. So I appreciate you coming inside to listen to this. Just as a little bit of an introduction, a couple of years ago, Ratio was teamed with a local engineering firm, Clark Dietz, working on a intersections improvement project downtown. We were looking at about 10 or 11 or so different intersections and identifying a number of different sort of pedestrian-oriented improvements on those. And about in the middle of that project, I had an opportunity to go out to San Francisco to the ASLA conference out there, and that's American Society of Landscape Architects, and saw a presentation by a guy named Kevin Perry, who is also a landscape architect, but who had done a lot of work with the city of Portland in a number of their initial experiments with rain gardens. And just was really blown away by what I saw, and a lot of what you're going to see this evening are things that he presented. And I came back, and as I was sitting there listening to him present this stuff in San Francisco, it just occurred to me that, gosh, this intersections improvement project seems like a real ideal candidate for applying a number of the things that Portland had been working to do. And came back and talked to the guys at Clark Dietz about this a little bit, because that project really wasn't a drainage improvement project. It was really more pedestrian improvements. But they were open to sort of thinking, a little broader about that. We got in touch with some folks from the city, Roland, and some other folks with the planning department, and invited them to come over to our office and just listen to this presentation and just kind of be aware of some of these things. That in turn led to a presentation at the APA conference that was here in Champaign in October of last year, and that's where Patsy and I sort of met one another. And so it's kind of the short history of how this presentation came to be and why it's sort of tied to downtown Champaign a little bit. So one thing, I guess, to make you all aware of, I guess, what this presentation maybe is not, is sort of a panacea solution to all drainage problems. I know a number of you are from the John Street neighborhood that I understand is, struggles or has struggled off and on throughout the years with drainage problems. There are going to be some things in here that may be helpful there, and some things that maybe not. I have not studied the neighborhood, so this is not a presentation about necessarily how to solve those problems specifically, but more so the intention is to sort of give you maybe a broader sort of national perspective about some things that are being done, and it becomes another arrow in the quiver, another tool in the toolbox, if you will. I'm going to start with some information about just kind of appreciating water quality, why value water, why that should be such a big deal, and then go into a number of these Portland precedents, and then as Patsy said, we have a project that we've completed a number of years ago in Bloomington, Indiana, that's sort of a rain garden on steroids, if you will. It's a very large piece of green infrastructure near downtown Bloomington. So all of these examples tend to be sort of urban kinds of / commercial examples, not really much in the way of residential specific projects, although I think you'll be able to make the connection to some of the things that we're talking about. So to start off with, just some guiding principles, I guess, for sustainable rainwater design. Really pretty simple. The idea is to manage runoff at the source and at the surface. For a long time, the paradigm has been, get water away from a site as quickly as possible and send it somewhere else. And we've developed detention basins and things like that over time to sort of moderate the flow of water off-site post-development. But this, really looks at kind of a micromanaging, if you will, that water right where it lands, or as close as possible to where it lands. We're using plants and water to slow, filter, cleanse, infiltrate, and so forth. So it's a natural systems-based kind of concept. And then the idea is to design systems that are simple, really. So many sanitary treatment systems and stormwater treatments can get very complicated and very expensive when they're done on a large scale. The idea here is to do what we can to just simplify the design and come up with something that's, aesthetically appealing, makes a contribution to the urban environment, makes a contribution to quality of life. So here's a few, refer to them as thought-provoking numbers, but it's kind of a story about water in numbers. And the idea is to just sort of consider these numbers and really develop an appreciation for water. Again, the mindset many times, and anybody who's had a flooded basement can appreciate this, but also any downtown that's been completely flooded with water, can think of water as a problem. It's a problem that needs to be dealt with. And I think part of the idea behind a lot of sustainable solutions is to sort of change the mindset to this, that water is a resource. It's a really, it's a precious gift that we should be taking advantage of. So 2.5%. 2.5% refers to the amount of water on Earth that is fresh water. Obviously, the Earth is full of water. The vast majority of it is salt water and can't be used for drinking, obviously. So 2.5% of the water on Earth is fresh water. 66% is the amount of water that's in our bodies. 66% of our bodies are water. 100, 98, 20, 2, and less than 1. In a 100-year period, a water molecule spends 98 years in the ocean, 20 months as ice, about 2 weeks in lakes and rivers, and less than a week in the atmosphere. Now, whoever figured that out has way too much time on their hands. But it was interesting to me. Just the idea that, water is constantly circulating. It's the same water over and over and over. 1 tablespoon is the amount of water, if all the water on Earth fit into a gallon jug, the amount of fresh water would equal 1 tablespoon out of all that. 3 hours is the amount of time it takes most people on Earth to gain access to fresh water. We are so used to turning on the tap. Here, we're incredibly blessed and spoiled to have such access to water. The vast majority of people on Earth don't. So again, it just kind of helps you appreciate what we have. And one more, 10,000, a bit of a sobering statistic, but it's the number of children under the age of 5, it's estimated each day, that die as a result of illnesses contracted by use of impure water. So don't mean to depress you or bring anybody down, but again, it's just to underscore, how fortunate we are to sort of have access to the natural resources that we do. So what I'd like to do then is go through a number of precedents. Again, a lot of these first ones come from the city of Portland, designed by a guy named Kevin Perry. After I saw him speak out in San Francisco, I called him up and I said, can you please send me your slides? I'd really love to be able to share this with some people. And he was very gracious enough to send me some things to use. So I want to make sure he gets appropriate credit. This project initiated when, in the early 90s, Portland was beginning to understand the magnitude of the problem they had with their combined sewer overflow system. And like a lot of cities throughout the nation, they were being mandated by the EPA to fix their CSO problem, so to separate the sanitary sewer material from stormwater. In many communities, all that sort of runs together in one system, which tends to overflow, and then, in very heavy rain events, a lot of bad stuff gets dumped directly into whatever the nearest body of water is, usually a river. So Portland in the early 90s was beginning to understand the magnitude of what their CSO fix was going to cost, and they knew at that time it was about $1.5 billion, which is not terribly unusual to be talking about billions of dollars to fix this problem. It's just very complicated. You've got aging infrastructure to try and separate in highly developed areas.